right, y'all, it is Crash Daddy Friday. Dr. Wolfe from ARCA took the stand today, and y'all, the expert was experting. So many questions that we have had, and did Dr. Wolfe finally just answer them? Plus, did Hank actually finally go too far? It is Friday, June 6th, and we just wrapped up day 28 in Karen Reed's second trial. Now, Dr. Daniel Wolfe from ARCA was called by the defense today, and y'all, this is the kind of expert testimony I love to see. Jackson was asking the questions. And by the way, this is right up Jackson's alley because when he was in the military, he served as a jet engine mechanic. So he is all about the physics, which makes him the ideal attorney to question Dr. Wolfe. So the jury gets to hear that ARCA was hired by a different agency, not the prosecution or defense, but they don't get to know that it was the feds. The judge says that that will be too prejudicial and might make the jurors start speculating, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Dr. Wolfe says that they were hired and began their testing in late 2023 and then into early 2024. So all of this was before they ever talked to anyone in the prosecution or the defense. Now, they were analyzing what could have happened to cause the damage to Karen Reed's car, especially the taillight, and to see if it was consistent with John O'Keefe's injuries. So it was a very open-ended question. Are these two things consistent with impacting each other? Now, this is where Dr. Wolfe brings up the cannon. Y'all, they built a cannon. That's so cool. I still think that is just so cool. The cannon was custom designed to pretty much simulate like throwing a glass, like a cocktail glass at the taillight to see if it would cause the kind of damage that they saw. And they didn't conclude that was the cause. Their testing determined it would have to have been thrown well over 37 miles per hour for it to have done that kind of damage. Then they did some testing to determine if the car could have hit John O'Keefe in the head and caused the skull fracture and damage to the car. And they found that inconsistent. Now, in the last trial, they went over all of this in detail, and their conclusions were that the injuries to John O'Keefe were inconsistent with having been hit by a car, and the damage to the car was inconsistent with having hit John O'Keefe. But something new this year that they did, which I thought was actually incredibly effective, Jackson brought in a full taillight to enter into evidence. Y'all, it was huge. And AJ even like banged on it in front of the jury, which I think kind of shows like how hard those things are. Those are really strong taillights. And also, I think it took the judge by surprise. Take a look.
Zip 250.
Thank you. If I may, Doctor.
Yes.
May I?
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Wolfe, you indicated that there was a 5 millimeter area of acrylic covering the diffusers, correct?
Correct.
What I'm knocking on, is that the 5 millimeter acrylic?
Yes, both on the quarter panel part that you just pointed to, as well as the liftgate part.
Now, what's interesting about this taillight that I didn't really think about before, that taillight lens is thick. It's like 5 millimeters. And then there's like an inch to an inch and a half of space. And then the diffuser underneath. And the diffuser was actually also cracked and damaged on Karen Reed's car. So for both of those to be damaged, plus the chrome piece that connects those diffusers, that had to be a major impact. And I don't think that you realize how hard something would actually have to hit it until they tested it and explained it all like this. So I think it was really effective. Now, there was also a common theme this morning with objections from Hank Brennan, and it seemed like Bev sustained pretty much every single one. I think there were a total of like 58 objections today, but y'all, I'm telling you, like all of the ones from Brennan were pretty much granted. It was crazy. So now let's talk about the new testing. The majority of the testimony today was focused on this. And I have to say, I think that this was really effective. First, I want to point out that the difference in testing between Dr. Welcher and ARCA is night and day. Dr. Welcher was asked why he couldn't use crash test dummies to do any of the kind of testing where you can get results to see what you would expect from impact of different speeds and positions. And his answer was basically that they could only do testing a couple of times before damaging the car. And he didn't want to do that, especially since he didn't know what the results would be. So he like specifically said if he got results that weren't what they were looking for, he'd have to be in there defending that. He was only wanting the results that they needed. Well, crash daddies are called crash daddies for a reason because they didn't bring excuses, they brought results. ARCA did testing with dummies and exemplar taillights, and they thought of like every single detail, y'all. They had the taillights in a freezer to control the temperature of them, and even took thermal images of them before impact so that they could record their temp for testing. And the guy putting them on even had dry ice on them to keep the temperature controlled until they began. They did the test with direct impact and a like side swipe or clipping type of impact to record and analyze the results of each. Now they did the test at 10, 15, 17, 24, and 29 miles per hour. And this was exactly what I've been wanting to see. Some kind of like science done to explain to me what they're saying is happening and what the results could have been. Take a look at a few of the clips from this testing.
What are we looking at here?
So in this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just a side view. Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct, not real time.
Okay.
This is a side-by-side comparison showing a depiction of the 17-mile-an-hour test impact to the test taillight, comparing it to that of the subject taillight.
You can play this for us, please. Is this depicting?
So this is a photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight subsequent to the 24-mile-an-hour impact test with the ATD arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
The 10-mile-per-hour test didn't do much damage, and as the speeds increased, more and more damage was done to the car and the taillight. And they also had the same hoodie that John O'Keefe was wearing on the dummy. And even at the highest impact with so much damage, the taillight pieces did not puncture the hoodie. So that part was inconsistent with John O'Keefe's clothing. Now, in the end, Dr. Wolfe was very clear about his conclusions, and they were based on the science and actual testing.
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
What do you base that opinion on?
The testing that we conducted in that last test that you just saw.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Dr. Wolfe?
Yes.
Hearing the difference in the testing was a big deal for me. Also, I was shocked to hear the price difference on what the Commonwealth paid Aperture, which was almost like $400,000, and what the defense paid ARCA, which was like $50,000 for these tests. That's a huge difference. And ARCA did so much more testing, so much more. Now, Dr. Wolfe pointed out that Welcher's testing basically just lined the arm up to the taillight height, but didn't answer any of the questions about what would happen if they made impact. And the arm being lined up isn't really a big deal because the arm is movable and it's on like a hinge. And so a lot of different height individuals could potentially line their arm up. It's not really telling us anything. And I got to say, I think the entire thing was really impactful for me. I'm assuming it probably would be for the jury. I'm curious to hear what they have to say, but at bare minimum, I think it gave the jury reasonable doubt. And reporters were saying that the jury seemed to be paying a lot of attention to this. So let me know in comments what y'all think. Did this show reasonable doubt? Why or why not? And of course, Since this direct was so impactful and bad for the prosecution's case, the cross-examination was just as bad as I expected it to be with Hank Brennan's behavior toward the witness. It started with bringing up the work that ARCA has done with the Department of Justice, and he made some kind of comments about how, oh, that was before you got hired at ARCA, right? So that wasn't you. That wasn't you who did that. And then he brought up Signal, the app that Dr. Wolfe used a few times earlier this year to speak to Attorney Jackson. Then he tries to make a big deal about Dr. Wolfe deleting his text thread with Jackson after the first trial was over and his work was done. And in a move that came across as kind of desperate to me, Hank even tried to bring up Wolfe's wife when asking about confirmation bias. So here's the thing with this. When she heard that her husband was getting so much attention and, was this internet celebrity all of a sudden, she was sent a link and joined a Facebook group to see what all the fuss was about. Now, she was proud of her husband and she thought it was cute. Then she became viciously harassed because of it and said that something that was fun and exciting and cute at first quickly turned scary because of it. She had to lock down her account because people were posting pictures of her and her children online to harass her. It's crazy. And Hank seems to want to twist this into something that makes it look like his wife cared about this case one way or another. Now, Hank continues badgering Dr. Wolfe about using a crash test dummy and giving an opinion on injuries to the arm. And Dr. Wolfe tries to explain that it's Dr. Rentschler, the other ARCA expert, who will be testifying about the injuries. And Brennan just continues his disrespect.
Well, again, Dr. Rentschler is going to be addressing the. You're shaking your head.
So I'm going to let him answer the question first, Mr.
Hank also brings up Dr. Wolfe and the sequestration order, meaning witnesses aren't supposed to talk about the case or other testimony. Now, we heard before that the FBI and the Department of Justice did talk to the experts who they hired about the case. Brennan brings this up while asking about Dr. Wolfe communicating with the defense. And it feels like it's trying to kind of mislead and give the impression that Dr. Wolfe did something really wrong and shady here. And Brennan knows that they are not allowed to say that it was the Department of Justice. So he's like intentionally making it look like Dr. Wolfe did something wrong to the jury, knowing that they can't clear it up. I think that this should 100% open the door for the defense to be able to tell the jury who hired ARCA and who talked to them about this case, which violated the sequestration order. Like, it's the feds. You should be able to say that. But will Bev allow it? Probably not. Now, Brennan continues to badger Dr. Wolfe, asking him the same question 5 times. And Jackson objects, pointing out to the judge that this is now 5 times that he has asked, which I'm glad that Jackson pointed out to the jury, because this is not normal. And then the heated exchanges progress to an interaction between Jackson and Brennan, which the judge tells the jury to disregard.
Well, is Dr. Welcher changing? I don't know if, I was relying on what he provided
This
in
is
his
not
report.
Dr. Welcher. I'm asking you.
Objection. It is on Dr.
No, it's not.
Okay, so jurors disregard that exchange between counsel. Next question.
Hank also spent a lot of time focusing on the weight of the dummy arm that was used in the testing being different than what he says John O'Keefe's arm would have been. But on redirect, Jackson points out that nobody knows the weight of John O'Keefe's arm. So there's that. Now, redirect isn't over. Dr. Wolfe will be back on Monday morning. And Karen Reed has said that the defense intends to conclude their case on Tuesday, at which point we expect the prosecution to have a rebuttal. And we know Dr. Welcher is coming back for round 2. So as we are getting closer to the end, let me know how you think it's going in comments. Tell me, do you think that the defense has shown reasonable doubt? Do you think that the prosecution has already proven their case? Who have we not heard from yet that you want to hear from? Let me know everything in comments. A new episode of 13 Juror Podcast will be out early next week, breaking down everything from this week. And of course, we will be back live Monday morning at 9 a.m. for court right here on Crime Junkie Jury.